you ever felt stuck, wondering why you can't seem to follow through? Maybe thinking something is wrong with you, and really just wanting to move forward, considering if real change is even possible? Hello, and welcome to Books to Better Your Life. If those are questions on your mind, this is the podcast for you. I'm Anne Brinkman with Better Your Life Coaching. I'm a personal growth book junkie who loves sharing my latest reads with you so you can be inspired to make change in your life. I share my takeaways from a self-development, wellness, or psychology book, then tell you how I put them into practice, and then give you a challenge to take on when you're ready. I also interview up-and-coming self-development and wellness authors to get their take on the best action-oriented and behavior change skills you can use to tackle life's challenges. Ready for change? Let's dig in. This week's book is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. This book is for you if you have any sort of interaction or relationship where the other person or people get defensive, irritated, or unpleasant, and communicating actually might lead to a worse space. So basically, this might be for you if you're human. The idea of nonviolent might not mean what you think. Yes, in some instances, it might be about avoiding anger or violence, but this more generally means communication which is intended to connect rather than divide, to be productive rather than escalate. I feel like this is a really topical time to be thinking about communication strategies because I think we're more disconnected than ever. I know here in the US, division has been a key strategy in any recent election. And social media is just a firestorm of trolls, anonymity, and bravery behind that computer screen that increases the likelihood of hurt and disconnection. I recently did a quick Enneagram test. It was a free version, so not really official. I had some misconceptions about it, so I hadn't really been interested before that. And when it was recommended, though, and I looked at it, the most fitting type for me was peacemaker, which then made a lot of sense why I chose this book. A bit conflict avoidant, wanting everything to be in harmony, for everyone to just get along. Hey guys, let's all get along. Try this 4-step strategy. So my enthusiasm for the strategy could be coming a little bit from that tendency of mine. But regardless of conflict avoidant or not, lots of times conflict isn't really productive, so why not try this? Rosenberg's origin story could be described as starting when he was a youngster during the time of a race war in Philly. After a deadly night, at school he was insulted with a Jewish slur that he hadn't even heard before. It followed up with him being cornered and beaten up. With the impact that the words and the displaced aggression had, you can see how that could later impact his life's work. The full book title is Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, Life-Changing Tools for Healthy Relationships, and it was first published in 1999. Now, Rosenberg also was a conflict mediator, and he used this strategy within his mediation, which was not the typical style of compromise. His focus is on satisfaction rather than compromise. He was practically name-dropping all the variety of instances he helped with. St. Louis gangs and the police department, between Israelis and Palestinians looking to bring peace to their homelands. This is back probably in the 80s or 90s, between landowners and migrant farm workers in Southern California. It definitely builds trust in this tool from the reader, both in that it works and just how many different scenarios it could be used in, from instances within a family, between students and teachers or administrators, to racial tensions, to angry customers, to political enemies. He even has an example of how a potential rape was avoided with this strategy. The idea of nonviolent communication, he shortens it to NVC, is pretty simple, but the execution is more complicated. That's why you need a full book on this. He has this simple strategy that he recommends to use to communicate with others, or to listen to others, and even to listen to yourself. A key idea of this strategy is that expressing feelings and having them acknowledged is crucial for open communication, and also to come in without judgment. So don't start out by saying, or even thinking, they're stupid or inconsiderate or lazy. I didn't say this would be easy. I know how easy it is to have our defenses up. People are often so judgmental of themselves. It's easy for them to anticipate it in everyone around them. So people are looking for that judgment. If there is any trace of it, they're going to find it. All right, the strategy you've been waiting for. The 4 parts are: step 1, share the feeling you are experiencing. 2, share the specific action taken when that feeling comes up. 3, share what need is not being met. 4, share your request. And there's a couple places you might get stuck. As I mentioned, there's a lot this book goes into, so I'm just going to talk about some key ones. And really, if this were clear and easy, you wouldn't need a book on it. You would already know how to communicate without ruffling someone's feathers. The complexity stems from the way we think and the conclusions we make and the patterns we get into. And the English language isn't really helping when we're talking about feelings. It sort of puts a veil over them. When we talk about feelings, just because you say, I feel ignored or I feel misunderstood, does not mean those are feelings. In those examples, it's more of an interpretation or assessment of the other person's actions or thoughts. I might even add that this is shifting the responsibility to someone else and not looking at what you are feeling. It needs to be an emotion, such as angry, irritated, sad, scared, etc. A lot of us aren't used to getting into precise feelings. This might take some practice for you. Personally, I have a feelings wheel I use with clients that they can refer back to. I'll link to it in the show notes. And in fact, many times when we say, I feel, that next word is not a feeling. I feel like you weren't being respectful. I feel like I'm dumb when you say that. Those aren't feelings, those are conclusions or something else altogether. So, when the needs aren't being met, think of feelings like angry, annoyed, concerned, confused, disappointed, discouraged, distressed, embarrassed, frustrated, helpless, hopeless, impatient, irritated, lonely, nervous, overwhelmed, puzzled, reluctant, sad, uncomfortable. Whew. So we start with that feeling, and then we say exactly what someone is doing when that feeling comes up in a very factual way. You should get really specific when you say the action that was taken, not generalize or exaggerate. Not, you always come home late, or you never listen, but the specific, quantifiable, precise action they do. Rosenberg even tries to make it more tangible by saying to describe the action as it would appear on a videotape. Oh, that's an old term, huh? This book is from 99. So, things like listening you can't really visually see, or even saying something like when you're disrespectful. Get really specific. What words or actions or volume is being used? Some examples: when you don't say anything after I come in the door and say hello. When you leave your dishes in the sink. So that's the need. And then, to be clear, when you share your need, it's not what the other person did. It's not like, you made me feel angry because you borrowed my shirt without asking. No one can make you feel something. Did me saying that make you mad? Sorry, that's on you. You feel something because a need you have is not met. It's not that other person who has caused that in you. Now, I found this pretty tricky when I did this to actually understand what my need is. So this could take practice depending on where you're at. And it's also not, I need you to stop doing that. That was my instinct to go to that. Some examples of this kind of need we're talking about here are fairness, respect, honesty, and of course the biological needs like food, housing, water, etc. When you borrowed my shirt, I felt angry because I need to know my things are being taken care of properly. Some other examples of needs: integrity, celebration, play, autonomy, physical nurturance. To break that down further, a need around autonomy could be choosing dreams or values. A need around physical nurturance could be protection from life-threatening things like bacteria or insects. I'm angry when you said I shouldn't go out because I have a value to connect with others. I was angry when you brought your sick friend over because I need to stay well so I can earn money this week. Could you use some support in your daily interactions, either for relaxation or a confidence boost? I create a monthly recording that gets you in the frame of mind you're looking for. Maybe that's relaxation and confidence before meeting new people or before an interview. Or maybe it's helping you shift away from some negative talk. Join my recordings list at www.betteryour.life/audio. That's .life, not .com. All right, next and final step is to make a request. And just because you make a request does not mean they need to do it. You need to be willing for them not to agree to it. And this needs to be specific also. And it should be the action to be taken, not what you don't want to happen. Also not, I want you to make dinner more often. Instead, how about, I would like you to make dinner twice a week? Not, I want you to stop leaving your stuff all over the place all the time. Instead, I would like you to put your clothes away each day. To put that all together, the feeling, the action, the need not being met, and then the request. More examples. I feel sad when you don't call me when you're away because I need to know I am loved. Would you be willing when you're away for a trip to call me every day? Again, no one said this was easy. The examples he uses do feel a little bit stilted, and I suspect they may initially feel that way to many of us. I think this framework is really in getting to a common understanding. And even that exercise of figuring out what exactly each step is can be eye-opening for the person acting that out. So now I would really love to hear examples of how people use this to talk about politics these days. Now, one of the challenges he brings up in the book is that people shy away from sharing their feelings for fear of what others would think, especially in the work environment when sharing feelings may be so rare that it almost seems inappropriate. And whatever judgment might come from it, being emotional, being a softie, looking unprofessional. But he has examples of time and time again how sharing really opens up communications and makes others trust you. He has an example of him working in what sounds like a predominantly Black classroom. It was a new environment to him, so he came in nervously, especially as soon as he entered the room, all the conversation stopped. But he didn't mention that nervousness. Just started in on his spiel without acknowledging his feelings. Now, of course, here's this white man coming in nervously, and what conclusions are they going to draw from that? Eventually, one kid said, "You just hate being with Black people, don't you?" He was shocked, but realized that in not sharing his feelings, he actually contributed to that perception. And then he did go into sharing that they were right about him being nervous, and then why he was actually nervous. And that's when the students were actually willing to listen to him and get curious about him and what he was sharing. And so many times when we're nervous, isn't the tendency to not want anyone to know? How many times are we hiding our feelings because of the risk when actually just being upfront is the best route? You know, us humans are experts at making assumptions, so why not just bypass that all and tell them so they don't need to assume, what? Now, I suspect most of the world isn't trained in this style, and they don't need to be. So those same steps that you can use to share what's going on for you, you can also use when listening and responding to someone. The idea here is, again, how important emotions are. I think if you ever heard someone really harping on something and keep harping, that feeling or thought is trying to get out. If there is no acknowledgement, it just may keep festering. So many conflicts can come from feelings not being acknowledged and obviously needs not being met. So the way you do this is to listen for the feelings and needs someone is saying or not saying, and to repeat them back. For instance, when someone says, "I can't believe the city delivered those new giant trash cans," and you might say back, "You sound angry that they didn't consider what everyone's needs are." So you're guessing at that feeling and the need. This can continue the dialogue and start to release the tension, and you just keep going from there. It's okay if you guess wrong because people are good at correcting. Some of the examples Rosenberg has, he keeps going back and forth for pages. And what this really creates is not just that person being heard, but it's also focusing on your empathy for that person. When we're feeling empathetic, we're more likely to be able to take their hateful or mocking words and recognize them as unmet needs and an expression of their pain. And that can be without even saying those feelings and needs for them. So I tried this a few times, and initially, I'll be honest, I tried it on someone else rather than sharing my needs and feelings. Someone in a Facebook group was kind of gruff, and I thought judgmentally calling out someone for looking on Facebook for jobs rather than just going to apply at the supermarket. So I made a guess at his feelings and need. "I'm guessing you're angry because you have a need for everyone to make an effort in society, and this comes off as lazy to you." He responded politely with, "Oh, I would never call someone lazy." Okay, so probably not the best place for this because that social media environment may not really allow for that easy correcting of understanding and continual growth in that dialogue. But it did actually increase my connection with that person and my empathy for their behavior. I had jumped to an assumption of them being a judgmental curmudgeon, and I was able to consider other reasons for their behavior. Not a particularly valiant attempt, but it was my starting point. And I also used it on a salesperson who had slid into my DMs. Felt it was both a good practice and also, like I was saying, exactly what was on my mind, not sugarcoating it, and as a byproduct could also be helpful to them. I also did this in a couple other communications out loud, and whereas often when I'm asking someone to do something differently, that might be met with hostility or eye rolls, this was a much smoother way. I don't even think I used all the steps, just including that action and the feeling really diffused the possible defensiveness. It felt a little unnatural, but it really had that intended result, avoiding defensive response and starting a dialogue around my needs and how we could get there. It's all about me, right? And I also let my husband know about this strategy as well, and we've been practicing it too. And as an engineer, actually, we both have that background. He compared it to filing a bug report. You get really specific about what happened, when it happened, and what should happen instead. I love that approach. I think the idea, too, of a formula could be really appealing to logic-minded folks as well. And I like the idea, too, of a common language around discussing concerns. Hey, let's try to get on the same page and share how leaving the dishes in the sink is coming off to us or being interrupted. And it can really be a starting point to discussions. Now, it was a bit of a leap to share my feelings. It's not something I do often. I think that's probably pretty common in our society. And there's even that question of, do I want to give that stranger or person that information? It feels a little bit like wearing my heart on my sleeve, and it can feel like you are either oversharing or giving them information they haven't earned. A little vulnerability test, I guess. And what's really the challenge to sharing feelings? Do they need to be so closely guarded? So my challenge for you this week is to figure out where you're at on these 4 steps and take it a step further and practice at that level. Again, the 4 steps are to share the feeling, the action that occurred, the need not being met, and the ask. So if you're taking on this challenge and just starting out, it might be in recognizing your own feelings, or if you got that down, recognizing what the exact action is, that is the starting point of that feeling, or identifying the need, or figuring out what your request would be, and then to share whatever elements you're at with whoever else is involved. Where are you at and what do you try? And so I'd love to know where you're at and what you're going to try. Find me on my website and choose the contact option to send me a message and let me know how this strategy worked for you. That's at www.betteryour.life/contact. That's .life, not .com. And I do love the stories in this book. I really glossed over the examples which show just how effective this strategy can be. Pick it up if you'd like to be inspired by those as well. Thanks for listening to Books to Better Your Life. If you could use some support on your own personal growth journey, please reach out. I'm an ICF certified life coach, and I help my clients with habits, mindset, confidence, and making what they want happen. I'm Anne Brinkman, and you can find me at www.betteryour.life. That's .life, not .com. Choose the contact option to send me a message and schedule a chat.